Your Worship, we're ready to go.
Okay, thank you, Dina. Good evening, everyone. We'll call this meeting to order. I'll ask if there's any disclosure of pecuniary interest. I'm not aware of any. If at some point throughout the meeting you find that you do, please declare it at that time. Under new business, we have a report from the Director of Recreation Events and Facilities. And Chris, I see you here. Are you going to speak to this report?
Certainly, thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, members of council. This is a procurement requirement under the procurement policy that staff seek council approval. In this case, our construction contractors working with our project management consultants and also seeking approval from our architects, the administrators of the Twin Pad Arena and Library project, are recommending that we move forward with the same engineering firm that did all of the design soil testing at the Twin Pad Arena site. Therefore, the recommendation before you today is requesting an approval for a contract with Pito McCallum to execute a contract under the Aquacon general contractors for $127,000 because it's a cash allowance, which is explained in my report. There is a requirement for the town to make an approval that this work is done to our standards.
Okay, thank you. I'll ask if there's any questions or comments. Councillor Kinney?
Thank you, Worship, and to Chris. I read your report, very well done. I see they've done work for us in the past, and it makes a lot of sense because they're extremely familiar with the site. So I'm in favor of it. I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Boulanger.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. When I talked to George Vedabakur about this earlier, he did acknowledge that I've been consistent in the fact that I strongly believe that we should follow our normal process of getting 3 quotes. I believe that serves the best interest of our taxpayer. I believe that given the work they've done on the site and the experience they have, it should position them very well to have the lowest quotation. But they've done a lot of work for the town, and you know, I certainly believe they're capable. But I believe there's other companies that may also be vying for work within our town, and that we've often seen significant differences in quotations. So I still strongly believe that we should follow the normal process. I did indicate to George Vedabakur that I have some additional information that also supports my desire for 3 quotes, but because it identifies a specific company or individuals, that we take that information or share that information in camera. Thank you.
I'll look, Mr. Rose, did you want to speak to the pricing and a bit of that process, please?
From the day that our general contractors mobilized on the site, you can imagine site work is very preliminary. They're going to start on almost day 1. And there is a element of experience with the current design requirements that were developed by Pito McCallum, which allows them to hit the ground running, no pun intended, but we are literally scraping back the soil and developing that site on day 1. And it's been Aquacon's urging to try and bring a consultant on board to start reporting on the compaction work that they've been doing and verifying the soil. This is very much in agreement. There is a rapport already developed with our designers, the architects, on the information and the requirements around building this building. And therefore, there was a specific idea that with the continuity of PML, that there was literally no comparison to have a second and a third. Although our only exception now is to ask council for approval because we're recommending this contractor without competing bids.
Okay, Mr. Ciao, can you add to this, please?
Thank you, Worship, members of council. Just a little bit of history, and it's outlined in the director's report. When we first needed to do soil testing on the site back in 2020, we went through a competitive process, and there are other companies that do this type of work. And when we went through that competitive process in 2020, we had 3 firms that bid, and Peter McCallum was the successful proponent, and they had the lowest price through that process. So when we did it then, they came on site, they did the soil testing on the site, they did the soil testing when we transported the clean fill from our public works yard over to the site. They tested that to ensure that it was good fill that could be used on the site. So as was indicated, they have a significant amount of experience with respect to work on the site. And we did go through a competitive process with them once. As outlined in the staff report, we feel in this particular case, it's sole source is warranted for the reasons outlined and members of council have already touched on. It makes good sense. Any other firm that coming in would have to start from scratch, pick up where Peter McCallum left off. We feel that Peter McCallum is the best firm to undertake this work. Thank you, Worship.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Your Worship. And the CAO basically mentioned what I was going to be talking about. There was, when they originally came on side to do a geotechnical and hydrogeotechnical surveying, they did come through a competitive process and they came out first in that. The other part of this too is that, and we have it throughout the town, throughout the years I've been involved at council, there are times when a company has got a significant scientific or geotechnical, in this case, knowledge that, as George said, they don't have to start at square one again. So we're looking at a project that we're trying to move ahead in a responsible manner. And then I also believe, and perhaps the Director of Recreation Events, etc., can verify this, but I think the budget on this was $225,000, and the amount, the upside was 225, and the amount is 127 and change. So it's not. It's also they're not asking for a stretch beyond the expected budget. So I'm in favor of it as is. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rose. Can you confirm those amounts that were given by Councillor Foster?
We do have an inspection and testing cash allowance built into Aquacon's contract for $225,000. Although there will be future inspection and testing contracts managing other sections of our project. At this point, without verifying the future areas that will be required as the building is developed, I can't say certainly that we are on budget. Although the soil is a significant portion, you can imagine the load-bearing capacity for our piers and the large building structure is a major part of inspection and testing in a project like this.
Thank you for the clarification.
Councillor Wells?
Thank you, Worship. I think Councillor Foster and George Vadabancourt have covered everything that I was going to say one way or the other. This company was originally hired on a bid process. They now have all the background data to move forward with. To move to someone now new at this particular point in time, to me, is a waste of time, and potentially may or may not save us any money in the long run. So because it was competitive to begin with, and it's the same project, basically, I'm prepared to go forward with the recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Belanger?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I just want to reinforce this as a new contract. It's a large amount of money, $127,000. Everything that was said, I agree with, and it should position this company to have the lowest bid, and hopefully that would be the case. But for our taxpayers, I think going through the normal 3-bid competitive process would validate that information. Not going through it, we will never know for sure. And so I will not support. I don't believe it costs the town anything to go to a competitive process, and it just reinforces what everyone's saying.
Okay, I'm just going to go back to the CAO for a minute. I think we do have some examples that would be helpful. Mr. CAO?
Thank you, Worship. So as the project has been proceeding, the standard practice is to get a minimum of 3 quotes on the work that's being done, and we've been doing that. This is the exception, obviously, to the rule. And in our general purchasing actions, this is very much the exception to the rule. Under our procurement policy, there has to be very good reasons why we would single source, and we feel in this particular case it's worthy of council's consideration. Peter MacCallum has bid on some other aspects of the work. They have not been successful. They have been successful in other competitive pieces as well. So each one is evaluated on its own merits and a determination made. But I just wanted you to know, members of council, that we are still very much encouraging and supporting competitive processes on every stage. But in this particular case, because of the past experience, we feel that Peter MacCallum should be awarded the contract. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wells and then Councillor Watson.
Well, I was just going to say to Councillor Belanger, he's saying it's no cost to the town. It is a cost to the town. It's in time. To go through a competitive process again now takes time. The awarding of the contract takes time. It delays potentially the aspects of moving forward. So there is a cost to the town. It may not be a monetary cost, but there's a cost in terms of the efficiency of the project.
Thank you for that. Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Wells took the words out of my mouth pretty much, but yeah, it's false information to say it will not cost. Time is money, and we need to move ahead. Winter is coming upon us, and the project will work much more smoothly with people that are already familiar with the project. So I'm in favor. Thank you.
Councillor Belanger.
Just my last comment is that everyone here is assuming that there would not be a competitive bid lower than Peter MacCallum. Our CAO just indicated that in some cases they have not been the lowest bid. So this, I could be right in that, or it could be wrong that there's not a cost. In fact, there could be somebody that's willing to come in and do the job for $30,000 less. We don't know unless we put it out for a competitive process. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Bray.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that this recommendation didn't come lightly. As a member of the construction steering group, we rely on information from Aquacon, our general contractor, Colliers, who's our project manager, as well as the members of the construction steering team, our CAO. So this recommendation didn't come to council lightly. I think a lot of things were considered, and to create unnecessary delays to the project at this point, I just can't support. So I'm fully in support of moving ahead with the recommendation as presented. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I see no other cards. Could I have a mover and seconder for the motion, please? Deputy Mayor Bray and Councillor Watson. I'm going to read the motion and then I will go to you, Councillor Belanger. Resolved that council authorize staff to approve Aquacon Construction Limited entering into a contract with Peter MacCallum Limited as consulting engineers for soils inspection and testing services of the town's Twin Pad Arena and Library project at a maximum cost of $127,925 exclusive of HST as a sole source purchasing action. Councillor Belanger.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just before we go to a vote, I had indicated that I had additional information that would be done in camera. I provided that information to the CAO in advance. I gave them advance notice of that. And I'd like to know how that's dealt with before we go to a vote. Thank you.
Well, Councillor Belanger, if it's the same information that was sent out earlier today, I don't see anything in there that would warrant going in camera under the rules that we're allowed to. I think that you received answers to your questions and your concerns. But Mr. CAO, I'll go to you and maybe you can explain a little bit more. I will also note that your concerns and were shared with all members of council, so that if you asked the question to go in camera, they knew why. So I think that we can all go, vote on whether we would go in camera or not, fully aware of what the situation is. But Mr. CAO?
Thank you, Worship. Just as briefly, for members of council, Councillor Belanger shared with me some information about a project that Peter McCallum was involved with in another location in town yesterday. Today, I investigated the information, spoke with representatives from Peter McCallum, received a response to my inquiries. Obviously, the information was confidential in some regards because it has to do with a separate project and a separate property owner. I provided all that information to Councillor Belanger in response to his concerns with what he brought to my attention. I felt that the concerns that were raised were addressed in the response from Peter McCallum, and were explainable and consistent with how processes work in terms of conducting the study that was done. So that information was provided to Councillor Belanger. I think it, as I said, it addressed the concerns, and I let members of council know that Councillor Belanger may be raising the issue tonight to go in closed session.
Thank you, Mr. CAO. Councillor Belanger?
The information provided me by the CAO did not satisfy all of my concerns, but I certainly recognize that if council wants to forego going into an in-camera session to discuss that more thoroughly, then that's their right. And so if we're going forward with a vote on that premise, that the vote is to suggest that we're not going to go in camera for further discussion and that we're just going to proceed with the vote, then that's council's decision.
Well, and I guess I would just say, knowing the information that I know, I don't feel that there is a need to go in camera. I think we would be breaching rules if we did, for the reasons that you want to discuss. I think we all have the answers that show there was really no concern with this particular situation. Councillor Foster.
Yeah, Your Worship, I just actually would look to the clerk on that for the Robert's Rules of Orders. I'm not 100% that a request to go in camera, whether it's a debatable motion anyway. So I'm not sure on that, but I'll leave that. Perhaps the clerk could just straighten me out. I'm happy to be wrong on that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I will go to you, Dina, and just recognizing I have read the motion already. We have a motion on the floor. But if you could just clarify that when someone asks to go in camera in this situation, do they require a seconder, and would there be a vote?
There would be a seconder, Your Worship, and there would be a vote to go into closed session. There is a motion on the floor currently that has not been disposed of.
Okay, thank you for that. So I have already read the motion. I am going to call the vote. All those in favor? And those opposed? And that carries by a vote of 6-1 with Councillor Belanger in opposition. Next, we're moving into closed session. If I could have a mover and seconder, please. Councillor Kinney and Deputy Mayor Bray. Resolved that pursuant to Section 239(2)A of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended, the next portion of the November 10th, 2021 special council meeting will move into closed session to discuss the security of the property of the municipality or local board. All those in favor? And that is carried. We'll just give it a minute to make sure that we're in closed session.
Ready, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you, Dina. We are now back in open session. If I can have a mover and seconder for item 5.1. Councillor Watson and Councillor Kinney resolve that council confirm the direction provided in closed session to the CAO pertaining to beachfront property matters. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. And a mover and seconder for 6.1. Councillor Wells and Councillor Foster resolve that a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Wasaga Beach at its special council meeting held Wednesday, November 10th, 2021 be received and be deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time, passed in number 2021-89. All those in favor? And that is carried. And I will just note our next meeting will take 5 or 6 minutes. 10 minutes, our clerk is saying, and we all have to get on a different link for that meeting. So with that, we will adjourn this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Council.